Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a little bit of a different video. I am sitting down, I'm relaxing a little bit more. This is going to be a book review slash discussion. So this is on the Bromance book club. This is by Lisa K. Adams. This is the book I will be reviewing and discussing with you today. Now this is not going to be a spoiler-free video entirely. I am going to start out the video giving you 3 of the big pros for me and the 3 of the big cons for me without giving any spoilers, so that anybody who doesn't want to hear spoilers can still get a little bit of a rundown to see if this might be a good book for you, if it's something you might be interested in checking out. So I'm gonna start there. I'm gonna start out with the pros. So the first pro for this book for me was there's a really sweet family dynamic shown in this book. The main couple that you are following, Gavin and Thea, they have 2 twin little girls and they are adorable. And the parenting that is shown throughout the book is really sweet. They're really great parents to these 2 little girls, and these 2 little girls are just, you will fall in love with them. They're absolutely adorable. So that was a big pro for me. That was really sweet to see. I feel like we don't get as much of that content in romance books, even when we do see married couples or couples with kids. So that was refreshing for me. And then pro number 2 for this book is that it felt like a genuinely real marriage. There were a lot more realistic things in this book, and the way she went about writing and the things she talked about. Some of the stuff is very personal, and you should read the back to know what it's about. It is going to dive into that type of stuff. If that's something you're not comfortable with, then, you know, maybe not read it, because it does dive into that. But the entirety of the book is about a couple having problems, and it basically blew up when the husband realizes that his wife has been faking it in bed the entire marriage. So that's kind of like the concept of the book. It is very much, I don't know if I would recommend it personally to somebody who's not married. That's just the type of reader I am. I wouldn't have wanted to read something like this before being married, because, you know, just the type of reader I am. That is entirely up to you, though. I just do want to warn you on that. But in that aspect, in those conversations about those types of subjects, it did feel very real and very genuine. It didn't feel like, oh, such a fairy tale, or this would never happen in person. There were a lot of good actual conversations and things in it that I was like, this is true, or like this could definitely happen, or this has happened and stuff. So I felt like in that aspect it was very real and genuine. My third pro for this book is that there is a 3rd act breakup, which I don't love 3rd act breakups. They're in most romance books though, so that's not really a spoiler. But in this 3rd act breakup, they actually did something different than most romances that I've read do, and I really enjoyed the way they did this. I don't want to say too much because this is just the short little clip it, but I will say that if you're one who doesn't like 3rd act breakups, you might actually like the 3rd act breakup in this, because it is done differently. To me, it was done a lot better. So I will talk more about that later in the video in the spoiler section though. All right, and now I'm gonna go over the cons of this book, because I did enjoy this book okay. It was not an amazing book, and there were some cons. So I know some people who follow me on here may not want to read this book because of some of these cons. The first con that I'm going to point out is that this does have cussing in it, and it does have quite a bit of cussing in it. If you're uncomfortable with reading cussing, or you only will read a little bit, this has a little bit more than a little bit. The F word is used quite frequently when he is with the guys in the book club, so beware of that if that is something that bothers you. That was a con for me that brought it down a little bit, but I can read cussing. So and number 2 is that there is sexual content in this book. I don't normally read books with any type of sexual content in them. I normally try to stay away from that. I don't prefer to read it. As a Christian, not my forte. I did go into this knowing what it was about, and knowing that there was a possibility it could very well have it because of the storyline. So I was like going in expecting that I might have to skip some parts. If you do want to skip, There is sexual content in chapters 9, 18, 19, 21, and 23 is an entire sex chapter. 23 is an entire sex chapter, and the epilogue. So if you want to read it and just want to skip over those, just mark those down and you can just skip right over it. But yeah, there is sexual content in this, and it ranges from just like sexual content to, as I said, chapter 23 is a full sex scene. I just completely skipped over it. And then one of those chapters that I mentioned, I'm not sure what, but it's just talking about it. So it really depends on your preference or whatnot. I pretty much just skipped over most of it and just wrote down where it was so that I could let you guys know. But if that's something that bothers you, that is in it. I mean, it's about this, and that's another reason why I say, well, if you're married, you might want to read it because of certain aspects, but if you're not married and you don't like sexual content, this is not the book for you. My last con is kind of two, because there was a slight one that I realized, oh, I didn't talk about this. There is some feminist stuff in this. If that bothers you, just beware. It's not very heavy or very much at all, but there is a few comments here and there. But the bigger con for me, the third con for me, was the Regency romance chapters in this book. So this book is about a bromance book club. They give, basically, this is a little book in the story. It's called Courting the Countess, and it's like on the binding there. So basically in this book, they give him this Regency romance to read, and he reads it throughout the book, and you get to read chapters with him. I didn't like this very much. I was too invested in the plot and in their story to want to stop and read something else just because there was a sentence or two that mirrored something later. For me, I would have much preferred if there was just a sentence or two or a paragraph or two put in at the end of a chapter or before the beginning of a chapter from the book, instead of an entire 2 to 4 pages of a chapter from that book. I ended up skimming most of this. This might not bother you. It might be fine. This might not be a con for you. It just was a con for me. So I just wanted to, let you be aware that this is in there. But again, it's one of those things that it's not very hard to skim or skip through at all if you just want to, read the rest of it. So, but yeah, those are the 3 pros, the biggest pros and the biggest cons for me for this book. And now I'm going to get into some of the nitty gritty of this, some of the more particulars. And so it is going to be going into spoiler mode now. So if you don't want spoilers on this book and you have not read it yet, I suggest you click away now. And if you have read it or you just don't care and you want to know all the spoilers, hi, I'm here to talk about it with you. I want to talk about it with you. I have some conflicting feelings with this book. I did enjoy this book. I only gave it a 3 stars though. And like I said, some of those were bumped down, some stars bumped down because of the cussing, because of the sexual content, because of the Regency chapters. That was definitely the big things that kind of bumped down the ratings for me. But I just want to talk about this a little bit. So in the book, Gavin and Thea are two main characters, and I thoroughly enjoyed Gavin, and I've realized I really love hearing from the guy's perspective even more so than I love hearing from the girls. So I enjoyed that this was more heavily his perspective. You do get a dual POV of Thea's perspective though too. It's just more heavily from his perspective. So at the beginning of the book, I did not like Thea at all. I did not like his wife, and she started to grow on me as I got to know her more as a character and got to know more of her past, but I still didn't love her as much. There were a lot of problems with it, but I enjoyed how this book ended it and ended up fixing some of those. Her sister too, her sister Liz comes to live with her during the majority of this book, and I could not stand her sister. Oh my goodness, guys, her sister was here spitting all this stuff about her husband and just, making it out like she was weak and she couldn't, help but crawl back to him, just making it out like he was a horrible person. And here's the thing, is that in the book, Liz, the sister, does not know what happened between Thea and Gavin. Thea has not told Liz what happened and what broke them up and what made her want to ultimately divorce him. She didn't tell her that he found out after 3 years of marriage that she'd been faking it the whole time and lying to him. So Liz is just over here assuming basically that Gavin has done the same thing that their dad did, and that is cheat with a bunch of people, basically. It's just cheat on constantly. I guess that's what she's assuming. And that's definitely not the case. And the way that this book took the whole Thea's father cheating and comparing it, her and Liz were constantly comparing Gavin to cheating. And so Gavin basically just runs away. Not entirely runs away, but he goes to the guest bedroom and he doesn't talk to her because his egos and his bride has been wounded, and he doesn't know what to say to his wife, who didn't even apologize for faking it, but lashed out on him even more because he didn't know that she was faking it all this time, which I was just like, okay, girl, calm down. So after all this, he doesn't know what to say. I think it's understandable that he is so, I think it's understandable. Yes, he needs to get over himself at a point. He needs to talk to her. But then she goes off and she basically kicks him out of the house because he won't talk to her. And so she kicks him out of the house. And then because he leaves, when she kicks him out of the house, she's divorcing him now. I'm like, you kicked him out because you needed space. And because he went, you're going to divorce him. So as you can see, it is definitely not all Gavin. In fact, I saw and I thought reading this that Thea was much more of the problem than Gavin ever was, even though Gavin was the one trying to fix everything throughout the majority of this book. So that was a little frustrating to just read and be like, oh my gosh, this woman, she's kind of crazy. But of course this like comes into focus more as you read, and it's like it's because of how her past was and she's not separating well. And we know that, but it drove me crazy, the fact that her and Liz compared and contrasted the two of them. I was like, your father cheating and not being a father to you and not ever being there is completely different than Gavin finding out you lied to him for years and not knowing what to say and then doing as you told him. He's still a present and wonderful father to your two twin girls, which the twins were absolutely adorable. And that was a part of the book I thoroughly enjoyed. They had a lot of parenting moments together and trying to like not let the kids see them argue, but how hard that was. And I have two little girls also, so I was like, it felt very realistic and very well done in that aspect of those scenes that they showed. I really enjoyed that from the author. I think she did a really good job with that part of the book. But yeah, it was so sad to see that he was being like pulled down like that. And another part of this book is Gavin, the main character. He has a lisp, so he stutters a lot. I liked that aspect. I thought it was cute and done well, and it wasn't like overly, I don't know, like drawn out or anything like that. It was sweet that his wife just, you know, she didn't care, she loved it. It was a really like sweet, wholesome thing between the two of them. I honestly liked a lot of the advice that the guys gave too. I was expecting most of it to be like dumb, honestly, which is kind of why I was curious about the book. I was like, is this even going to be like good, or is it just going to be like crappy cliche advice? And there's actually some like meaningful, like real stuff that I was like, yeah, that is true. But on that note, I also felt like the Bromance book club was done differently than I thought it was going to be done, and I didn't quite prefer how she did it. I just felt like it wasn't as much a part of the story as I thought it was going to be, which, you know, to each your own. That might, other people I'm sure loved it and thought it was the perfect, but for me, I thought it was going to be a little bit different, and I would have preferred to have a little bit more of the bromance and a little bit more of the guys actually figuring stuff out together. I also thought like more of them were going to be like helping with their own situations, and most of them didn't like talk about theirs. It's like only focused on the guy who was struggling at the moment or whatnot. And so I thought it was going to be more of a collective, like, oh yeah, well, we're struggling with this, and or we did just struggle with this and we got over it and here's how we did. So there wasn't as much of that, but the few things that they did kind of give advice on, I did think was pretty decent, you know. Obviously there's some like joking. I did mention that a lot of the cussing happens with those scenes with guys. So I didn't prefer that. There were, most of the guys, honestly, I didn't care for too much. Dell was, I think, the best guy character out of them, and they ended up trying to make Mac a better guy at the end, but I was like, okay, well, he still doesn't have to act like this, like, So, I don't know. I feel like, obviously, there are more books in the series, I believe, so they can do more with the character development and make it a little bit more believable with more actual character development instead of just flipping a switch and being like, oh yeah, now this chapter he's all hunky-dory. But yeah, I didn't love the guys. What I did love was Gavin's love for his wife and his family. That was very sweet to read and to see him fighting for his family and for his wife and trying to do all of these things better. It was really wholesome in those parts. So, and that's part of the reason why I did really want to read it, is because I love stuff like that and I wanted to see, is it good, even despite all the extra stuff that was in it. All right, so I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit because I did have some problems with the ending of this book. So I'm going to talk about that. The ending of this book, the third act breakup is what I liked, because the third act breakup actually came from Gavin. And Gavin basically leaves because Thea starts to get mad at him about reading Bromance books to better, like, love her. Like, she's literally getting mad at him for doing what women want men to do. You know? And I'm like, girl, what is up with you? So he actually finally turns the tables on her, does what I'm thinking in my head, which I feel like people don't do in romance books most of the time, and tells her, you know what? I've done everything to save our marriage. I'm not lying to you. I'm not, like, I love you. I'm not just up and leaving. You're the one who's pushing me away. You're the one who's not even trying, who's trying to make me out as an evil person when I'm not. You need to figure out what's wrong with yourself and with your backstory. Like, what is this stemming from? You need to figure that out and figure out if you do love me and if you want to keep us, because I'm here, but you need to figure it out. So he kind of puts it all in her court, which is what I'm thinking this entire time, is that, like, she's kind of the big problem. Like, yes, Gavin had some problems, but, like, he never from the beginning he admitted that he had some problems, from how I saw it, and Thea didn't at all. So I loved how they switched it on her. The girl never takes responsibility in these love stories. So I really, really enjoyed that. And that was another reason why some of the other stuff did not bring it down below a 3, because I still really enjoyed this. And I kept going back and forth between a 3 and a 3.5, and I'm still not completely settled, but right now I just have it as a 3. So Thea is, like, losing it, and she's starting to think that he's right, and she decides to go to her father's wedding because her father is getting remarried again and she wasn't gonna go, and this is like his 4th marriage. So she goes to his wedding and she talks to him and stuff, and this is the big question she asks him, is she asks him if he regrets having her, like her and her sister, like having kids, and he says no, like, I loved having kids, this isn't how I, all I knew how to do to be a good father was to just provide for you financially or whatnot and stuff like that, because he wasn't as active as, say, like Gavin is with their girls. And it was weird. It was like, okay, there's so much stuff that's talked about throughout the story with her mom particularly that was never dug into, and more stuff with her dad and her mom's relationship that she didn't even ask her dad about. Marriage-wise, like, she just asked that question and then it was just like, okay, I'm fine now and now I can love him. And I was like, that's not the deep thing that we're talking about. I mean, we've gone over several things with your mom and your dad's relationship, and you didn't touch or dive into any of those. So I was a little confused how that just, like, wrapped it up for her. I was majorly confused by that. So I didn't like that. And then it was cute that Gavin, like, rushed down to Atlanta to see her at the wedding. the whole concept of like rushing in to interrupt her dad's wedding, I guess because he's like a douchebag, was kind of funny, but also just kind of weird. And so that they could like renew their vows, aka get married again, it seemed a little off and like out of place, like very sudden. I was like, where did this come from? I don't know. I felt like there was a much just simpler, more realistic thing that they could have done and still made it a grand gesture. I didn't prefer that. So the end of the book for me, while I loved the third act breakup, the way they wrapped it up after that was just kind of weird for me. It just felt a little bit off for the story. I didn't love it. And then I also didn't love that there was a bit of a, actually, is there 2 epilogues in this? I think there's just one. Yeah, there's just one. There is a little bit of more sexual content in the epilogue, and I was like, can't you just like wrap it up nicely in the epilogue or whatnot? So yeah, there was that. But I think those were all of my main thoughts going through the book, my main points. I hope that was like a good discussion review or whatnot for you. This is my first time trying this, so I hope it went okay. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have read this book, I'd love to talk more with you about it in the comments. And if you haven't, let me know if you think you're going to, or if you're not going to, with what I pointed out in this review. And yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm going to try to do a good couple reviews. I want to try to do at least like 2 a month. I'm gonna try. We'll see. But yeah, and they will not all be romance books like this one. This is just what I started out with. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And I wish you the best reading experience imaginable. All right, guys. Bye.